Hop and Vetiver, Accidental Anarchists, Chapter 13. Love Tanneth. Letters lay strewn on the bottom of the cabinet, dozens of them on blue-lined paper. Most were in code, but several were filled with lazy, all lowercase handwriting. Signed at the bottom in droopy script was the name Tanneth Gomez. A few, Vetiver noticed with mounting alarm, just said Tanneth. Robert and Kat both had their eyes closed, and Isla was staring at the opposite wall. Vetiver glanced around, her mind racing. The others would come back soon, and Hop would not want them to see this. Vetiver folded the paper into a neat stack. She was searching for a rubber band or a piece of string to keep them together, when Yasmin's voice grew near. "Can look at it again if you want, but I don't think it's something we can fix on our own." She, Hop, and Corbin re-entered the living room. After sweeping the letters into her bag, Vetiver mashed them down hard, so no paper showed. "Find anything interesting?" Corbin asked as he followed Yasmin into the living room. The bottom drawer was still open. "No! Yes, actually, there's a ton of money in the top drawer. I don't know what we'll use it on, but there's a ton." Yasmin said, "I might be able to find Robert some stuff at the cough medicine store. I could get food and stuff too. You guys are staying the night, right?" Corbin and Hop looked at each other, then at Kat. Kat sighed and stood up. "That might be a good idea. Hop and Corbin can buy food, the Sprite should be more open with Hop around, and I'll go with you to the pharmacy." A rectangle of light crawled across the ceiling too slowly to notice. Vetiver tried watching it move, but it was too gradual for her eyes to perceive. She lay her hand flat, just a fraction of an inch from the light on the wall, and waited for a touch of warmth on her fingers. It was a boring game. She wanted to read Hop's letters, but Isla had remained in the apartment while everyone else went shopping. The Sprite sat leaning against the couch where Robert lay sleeping. Although Vetiver doubted Isla would notice the letters, she didn't want to chance it. Instead, Vetiver thought about things that happened too gradually to notice, like one stroke that forms one letter that becomes a word, sentence, paragraph, chapter, book, and how many copies of how many books there were in the world, like a tiny cell that divides and multiplies and turns into a human being, like a person morphing from a red, impressionable newborn into a complex, fully formed adult. How did other people just take it all at face value? Couldn't they see how odd it all was? Vetiver remembered the day Cricket's cat had kittens, and she had told his mom, "Isn't that crazy? Yesterday it was just one cat walking around, and then all of a sudden 4 other cats popped out. Isn't it weird? Where do you think it comes from?" And Cricket's mom had said, "It's not strange at all. Why don't you ask your uncle about it?" She had asked Uncle James, but all he'd given her was an uncomfortable talk of eggs and sperm, and that hadn't really been what she wanted to know. Where did life come from? Where did it go? What was it made out of? Nobody could answer her questions. Nobody even understood what she was asking. After a few years, she had given up. The light from the window seeped all the way past her wrist, and was turning orange with sunset when the door squealed open, rousing Vetiver from her meditations. Corbin and Hop entered the kitchen, and Hop dropped a load of groceries on the kitchen table. Vetiver got up to see what they'd found. Corbin had picked up 2 gallons of milk, half a dozen cans of clam chowder, a tub of hummus, and a baked chicken. Hop had chosen 4 boxes of Pop-Tarts and a party-sized bag of potato chips. "He tried getting beer, too," Corbin complained, rubbing his arm where the grocery bag had cut into it. "What are we going to do with him?" Vetiver put the milk in the refrigerator. When Kat and Yasmin finally arrived an hour later, they looked grim. "I talked to a Sprite at the pharmacy," Kat said, "but they were understocked. All I could find were some painkillers and antiseptic ointment. The lady there said that from my description we'll probably have to amputate, so I picked up some tools at a hardware store." Hop opened his mouth, then closed it without saying anything. He couldn't think of an alternative. Without professional medical help, Robert's arm would be nothing but a useless, dead appendage anyway. Kat carried her tools and medicine to the living room, where she pushed the coffee table nearer to the love seat, wiped it off, and laid out her surgical instruments. Vetiver ate a Pop-Tart, then gave one to Isla, who was still leaning against the love seat. After bumping into her a few times, Kat suggested, "Why don't you go sleep in the bedroom? You'll need to be rested up tomorrow." Isla obeyed. Vetiver thought about going with her, but she had never seen an amputation. "Have you done this before?" she asked Cat. "No, but the sprite at the drugstore told me what to do. Hop, Corbin, will you come here? I'll keep Robert calm and walk you through." "What?" Hop paled. "I only know how to injure people, not fix them." Corbin squatted on the floor beside Robert and motioned for Hop to sit next to him. Cat placed her hand on the wounded sprite's head and closed her eyes. "It's simple, really. Just clean up the area below the tourniquet, then saw through the bone, close to where the muscle ends. We have a needle and thread in the first aid kit, I think, so you can sew the skin up. When that's done, Hop can cauterize the stump. Vetiver, will you bring that lamp over? It's getting dark in here." Vetiver carried the shadeless lamp to the coffee table, stretching its frayed cord to the limit, and turned it on. Bright light illuminated the instruments. Corbin pulled on a pair of gloves and picked up a pair of kitchen scissors. Cat had sterilized them with alcohol, but Corbin still looked more like a butcher than a surgeon as he used them to snip dead, grayish-pink flesh and springy tendons away from the place he intended to cut. Vetiver stood behind the couch so she wouldn't be in the way, but she could still see. "Now for the serious phase." Corbin picked up a fine-toothed hacksaw from the table. "Who wants to do this part?" Hop scooted a few inches backwards, and Vetiver avoided eye contact. Yasmin retreated into the kitchen. "Guess it's all on me." Corbin set the saw where it was perfectly flush with the meat of the arm, and set a steady groove. He was careful to saw smoothly, not leaving a pointy or uneven end. Grains of bone built up on either side of the cut, until Robert's arm detached. Corbin wrapped the severed arm in a grocery bag and set it aside, then went to work sewing up the larger arteries with neat, precise stitches. Hop was going to seal up the stump, but Corbin wanted to be doubly safe. "How can you be so calm about this?" Hop asked. Vetiver could smell his sweat. "I got a lot of practice sewing you up when you were little." Corbin's voice was slow with concentration. "Mostly your scalp, and your knuckles too. It seemed like every other week." Hop glanced down at his hands. He'd never noticed the pale, spidery scars before. "Thanks." "Your turn," Corbin told Hop. "What exactly will I have to touch?" "Yep. Don't totally fry him, just a nice, even, light burn over the stump." Hop rubbed his hands together and they began to glow. Gingerly, he pressed his hand to the stump. The glow flickered and almost went out. Hop shuddered. "Ugh, it's so cold and slimy." "Shh," Cat warned. "Come on," urged Vetiver, clenching her own hands into fists. She could feel her pulse. "You've got to, Hop." Hop cupped his palm over Robert's clammy wound, and a tendril of smoke drifted toward the ceiling. The sickly, savory aroma of charred meat flooded the room. Vetiver, who thought she'd been doing pretty well up to that point, gagged and fled to the kitchen. Yasmin invited her to eat some chips and hummus, and Vetiver did so until the others finished cleaning up. Hop sank into a folding chair, then got up and washed his hands with hot water and soap before returning to the table and cramming chips into his mouth. "That was horrible. I'm going to have nightmares." "Nobody dreams on this side of reality, nitwit," Corbin retorted. "Speaking of sleep, I call the bed." "Isla's already sleeping there," Cat said as she peeled meat from the chicken. "Guess it's the floor then," remarked Yasmin. While the others slept, Vetiver crouched under Hop's kitchen table. Vetiver had loved their table back in Bleak Silver. It had been old and chipped and stained, but still sturdy. Uncle James always said it had good bones. When she was little, he gave her a box of crayons and allowed her to draw all over the bottom, because who'll ever know? Hop's kitchen table was of the folding card variety, and the only thing on the bottom was a streak of old gum. Vetiver pulled out one of Tanith Gomez's letters and read by jittery green light from the street lamp outside. "Edsel Rajani, administrator of reckless behavior." Yeah, maybe becoming chief ruler of both sides of reality is a lot of responsibility. Sure, people might have less individual freedom. But since when do they know what's best for them? I mean, waking up. There are a few people who wake up early to lead a more satisfying, productive life. But most people? They're forced up by jobs, family, obligations, duty. How about switching people's duties and focuses from a bunch of random things to one main thing, serving me? Well, us. I'm saying us because I said you could be my vice president of all realities, because I want you to help me out. Also, I don't care about making people more productive. Basically, if I have to get up every morning, everyone else should have to get up earlier. If I have to work for a living, they should have to work harder. Plus, the hares have put me in a bad mood lately. Anyway, I have to go now. I don't actually have to. There are just some abnormal humans coming this way, and it would be a pain if they messed with my yard. So I'll go out there and send them some depressing psionic vibes until they leave. Then I'll probably sit on the sand and stare at the sun. When my eyes get dry, I'll go inside and work on some minions. That's what I really have to do today. That's why I'm writing to you, because it's one more thing between me and actual work. This psionic revolution idea is way more work than I thought. Tanith Gomez. The next letter, dated a few weeks later, read, Eatsall. Hey, what's going on with you? Have you been hanging out with your brother? He is way, way off the mark on just about everything. And I'm not. I'm actually smart when I bother to work at something, which I hardly ever do. But remember that one time in grade 11, when Lloyd bet me I couldn't do well in school for one day, and I aced everything, and the philosophy teacher got into an argument with me and had a stroke? Oh, I forgot. You didn't go to my school. Anyway, it happened. I'm not dumb. This psionic revolution thing is going to work. It's going to blow everyone away. Tanith Gomez. 2 weeks later, Hey, Esau. I laughed, actually kind of out loud, when I read your letter, even though you weren't trying to be funny. It's just, you're going so much against your natural tendencies. I mean, aren't you supposed to be all crazy and rash? Speaking of which, I have a rash on my left butt cheek from sitting all the time. That may make me less attractive to you, but actually, I don't care. Anyway, I wanted you to know the reasons for you and me to start an awesome psionic revolution. There are so many reasons. Here are the idealistic reasons. The world has stagnated. There are few humans anymore with enough imagination to bother anyone, meaning the assembly is in danger of becoming obsolete. Whether it's because of sterile, bland environments or the increasing pressure placed on people to conform and perform, a radical shift on that side of reality would remedy our problem. Wasn't it Mao, the human, who said that a state of constant revolution is optimal? And he was smart. At least a lot of people think so. Those are the idealist reasons. Here's mine. Life has been boring and unfair. I deserve better, but really, who deserves anything, you might ask? To which I reply, shut up. Hey, that period parentheses period thing looks kind of like a whale. And the hares are really getting to me. They eat a lot of my minions because my minions are slow and smell like blood. I have a plan for them though. Hint, it involves you. But mainly, I want to do something big because life has been boring. Your reason. You're sick of being pushed around and being told what to do. Corbin is dumb. We've already established that. And he's constantly giving you orders. It used to be okay when you agreed with most of what he said, but now you're growing up and sick of it, especially because everyone tells you to be gentler with the humans and to definitely quit brawling in Haven every other weekend, just for the fun of it. Besides, if being an administrator becomes obsolete, what are you going to do with your particular skill set? Finally, Corbin is so bossy. Does he think he's your dad? Don't lose sight of your original conviction, or whatever. Tanith. Then, a few days after that, you know what? I'm sick of people saying I'm pretty. I've been sick of it forever, and they never stop. It's always, your hair is so pretty, Derp. Or, Derp, you have nice legs. Or, Derpity-der-derp, your eyes are beautiful. And they never say anything about me, the real me. They just happen to like the meat puppets surrounding me. And sure, Who I am inside is terrible, but it's even worse when I have to hear a bunch of compliments from my body. So I dreadlocked my hair. It's matted and awful. It freaks everyone out except for the cursed hairs. These hairs, Edsel. You have to understand. You have to go through with this revolution. For me. Tanith. The next letter was partly in code. Hey, Edsel. The dreads are growing on me. They look too good. I guess I'll have to shave my head. Apparently someone's been reading at least some of my letters. I could send them with my minions as couriers, but that would be a pain. So I'm sending you a minion with a key and encoding the rest of our correspondence. Here are the details for this secret plan. After that, the letters were encoded. When she was 8, Vetiver had gone through a phase of interest in codes and secret messages, but this looked beyond her capabilities. If someone else, Lloyd perhaps, deciphered these letters, Hop might be in trouble. Vetiver had a feeling that some members of the assembly wouldn't care about Hop's motivations for helping Tanith Gomez, or that he'd initially refused. They would only want to punish him. What to do with the letters? It would probably be best to burn them, but technically they were still Hop's possessions. Vetiver didn't want to get caught feeding them into the gas stove burners and have to explain herself. Instead, she refolded the letters and hid them in the bottom of her bag. Then she lay on the dusty linoleum and stared up at the kitchen window until the green halo of the streetlight flicked off, to be replaced by the warm, pink glow of morning. Kat roused Hop and Corbin while it was still dark out. We want to start before it gets hot, she said when Hop whined something unintelligible. Yasmin woke up enough to mumble, "Water in the fridge," before falling back to sleep. Are you sure we should take her? Corbin asked as Vetiver grabbed a plastic bottle. It's going to be dangerous. Like I've never been in danger before, scoffed Vetiver. Hey, don't forget, she's my responsibility. Hop blinked at the time displayed on the microwave. 4 a.m? Is that clock right? Come on. Kat held the door open. Although the sidewalk had collapsed outside the door, someone had laid a plank across the gap. The group encountered no danger leaving Hysteria Descent, and before long they passed under the water tower and out of city limits. The town was surrounded on 3 sides by stepped hills, while the 4th side angled down gently. It featured squat spires of mud interspersed with piles of discarded items. It looked like prime real estate for rattlesnakes and Bavarian hares. But the only animal Vetiver saw was a round-eyed owl staring from a hole. 2 kilometers later, the spires flattened out and a sea of sand began, not the grungy material of instability, but fine, white stuff sculpted into swells by the wind. Vetiver's feet sank in deep. Sand flowed around her knees and stroked against the bottom of her bag, where Hop's letters were hidden. After a sand avalanche submerged her almost to her hips, she stopped. Corbin, why don't you just fly around and see where her house is? Then we wouldn't have to wander like this. Corbin didn't answer until they reached the top of the dune. The 4 of them sat down to rest. Haven't you noticed? The air is thinner here, too thin for me to fly in. Everyone was breathing hard. Kat, in particular, looked unwell from the low oxygen and the beams of sun stabbing down like lasers. She poured half a bottle of precious water over her head. Hop and Corbin fared better with their darker skin, but Hop was sweating and had finished all his water. We have to find shade soon or I won't be able to go on, Kat warned when she caught her breath. Hop stood up and, shading his eyes with his hand, peered around. These dunes are so high, I don't think we could see anything unless it was really close, or really tall. If you lifted me up, I might be able to see farther, Vetiver suggested. Hop cupped his hands, and Vetiver stepped into the stirrup. With a grunt, Hop hefted her to chest height. Once again, Vetiver was surprised at his strength. She clung to his thick hair for balance, and he growled something. Still can't see anything, Vetiver said, scanning the area. Sorry. Can you go any higher? Hop hefted Vetiver upward until his arms locked straight up. Vetiver struggled to keep her balance on his sweaty palms. It was really quite a feat. Hop was only a couple feet taller than she was, but he was far stronger. Vetiver looked around, trying to move only her head. Blinding sand and bright azure sky stretched out in every direction. Blue and white, blue and white, blue and... She caught something over her far right and twisted for a better look, almost losing her balance. Whoa! Do you see something? Hop asked through clenched teeth. His left shoulder cramped without warning and he flinched. Vetiver lost her balance and fell. Her knees thudded painfully into the sand. Ow! Hop rubbed his shoulder. Sorry, I couldn't hold you any longer. What did you see? I couldn't get a good look at it, but it looked like the top of a building. Ow, she repeated as she tried to rub sand out of a scrape on her knee. Kat tottered to her feet. Let's head that way. Her face was pale pink with sunburn, and she stumbled as they set out. Vetiver worried that if they sat down again, Kat wouldn't be able to get up. They slid down the side of the dune. The white sand nearly buried them, but they struggled up and headed in the direction Vetiver had seen the building. Tanith Gomez's house was visible from the top of the next dune. Corbin, who'd reached the top first, dropped to his stomach, and the others followed suit. Vetiver tried to stop panting as she surveilled the area. Tanith's home was laid out neatly before them. From the letters, and from what people said about the former administrator of Apathy, she had assumed the place would be a dump, but this was not the case. The house was surrounded by a wide, flat courtyard, empty aside from raised glass cubes and straight aisles. Vetiver couldn't tell what they were from this distance. Besides, the house was what caught and held her attention. It was a nice one, tower-like, with modern, minimalistic furnishings and bamboo floors. She could see everything inside because the house lacked exterior walls. The interior was right there, laid out tastefully for all the world to see. Vetiver had always assumed walls were structurally essential. Perhaps they were, and Tanith's house was held up by some kind of voodoo. Her brain conjured up an image of blood in the dark spaces between the walls. Where is she? What do we do now? Asked Top. See that? Corbin pointed to a flash of bright fabric contrasting with the stone front steps. I think that's her. We'll storm the place. Gomez is mostly helpless without her minions to protect her, and I think those were almost completely destroyed in Hysteria Descent. I doubt she has much blood left. We might even be able to take her without a fight, Kat added, but her voice held little optimism. Corbin led the way, and the four of them slid down the dune and stepped into the even sand of the courtyard. The figure on the steps didn't move, so they made their way cautiously forward. What if she's dead? Vetiver wondered. What if she used all her blood fighting us? They entered the standing cubes, which Vetiver saw now were aquariums. Strange, otherworldly fish were trapped inside, each one in some kind of peril. She passed a blue-black, lumpy specimen who didn't have room to turn around in his tank. In a couple exhibits, too many fish writhed together in cramped dans. What is this place? Vetiver halted next to a tank, where a glittering gold eel floated to the surface and hung there, upside down for a moment. Pale, soft belly facing the sun, before laboriously turning over and struggling not to repeat the process. Kat stumbled into Vetiver's back. Keep going. In the next tank, a swarm of lamprey devoured a trout. An octopus struggled to move despite hard growth springing up on its body, flashing scarlet and pale cream in distress. I don't like this. Vetiver only noticed she was shivering when her teeth chattered as she spoke. Hey, don't be so hard on my lethargy gardens. Vetiver jumped at the soft voice and turned to face the speaker. Tanith Gomez, former administrator of Apathy, lifted her head from the polished marble step. She was just as pretty as the picture in the newspaper, except she wasn't smiling. She wasn't wearing as many scarves and beads, either. Instead, she wore a fuchsia tank top with a cowl. Her long bronze legs rested on the bottom step, baggy mahogany silk pants flowing and shimmering around them. A strip of bright red paisley fabric held her dreads back from her face. Did you come all this way just to badmouth my hobby? Hop and Corbin had moved in front of Kat and Vetiver, the instant Tanith moved. Hop's switchblade shot out, the blade burning umber with heat from his fist. Vetiver thought this response was a bit overblown. Tanith looked relaxed and harmless, lying on the steps. Her lack of apprehension made the twins' prickly behavior look foolish. Vetiver considered squeezing around Hop to get a better view. "We're arresting you for unlawful and destructive activities," Corbin said. He pulled a slip of folded paper from his pocket. "This is our warrant. Will you come peacefully?" Tanith leaned her head back on the step. "Can you carry me?" "No, we can't. We had a hard enough time just walking." "Get up." Corbin took a step nearer. "Can't. I've lost too much blood. Can you make me some food, administrative psychopathy? If you don't, I could die." Corbin stiffened at the mock title, but ordered, "Cat, you go into the kitchen and see what you can find. Hop and I will guard her. It'd be just like her to die on us after we came all this way." "I'm hungry too. If there's food, grab some for me, please," Hop asked. Cat climbed the opposite side of the steps from Tanith, keeping as far away from the woman as possible, then crossed over into the kitchen. She rummaged through the refrigerator. "Gomez, what's the purpose of all this?" Corbin asked. "What could you possibly gain from sending psionic power to the other side? The humans are destroying everything. They have no idea how to use it." "Can you carry me inside? The heat is making me feel faint." "You've caused everyone else bigger problems than feeling faint. Answer me, and maybe I'll take you inside." "Well, the hairs. They were a big part of it. Everyone hates them, you know. Except you, apparently. They're especially bad for me. They sniff me out. So I sent them away." "And giving humankind psionic—" "Getting there. Sure, I gave them new power, but they could have used it to vastly improve their lives, instead of to kill each other. Their decision wasn't my fault. Maybe I was just trying to be nice for once." Cat called, "Vetiver, do you want a sandwich?" "Yes, please." People set their own courses in life. The person who mines the metal to make the gun isn't responsible for the murders committed by the weapon. Neither is the person who builds the gun, nor the person who sells it. Not even the person who offends the person holding the gun. The murder is entirely the fault of the person who pulls the trigger. People don't have to be slaves to hate or other emotions. You should understand that most of all. I'm not getting sucked into an argument with you. Oh, my head. Tanith flopped an arm over her face. I'm going to lose consciousness. Someone with a heart, help me. You carry her, Corbin told Hop. Hop slipped his arms under Tanith and picked her up with almost no effort. Despite the fact that she was much taller than he was, his eyes widened. You don't weigh anything. Like I said, I've lost a lot of blood. Tanith clung to Hop's shirt until he set her down on a fluffy leather couch in the living room. Can you put a blanket over me? Hop did so, while Corbin sat and watched from a comfy chair, and Vetiver admired Tanith's house. Tanith had directed them to the living room, where she stretched out on the couch. A widescreen TV faced outwards. People could probably watch it from the dunes. The room's wall was distressed brick, unlike most of the other walls, which were trowel-textured drywall. A coarse hemp rug covered the bamboo floor, and the air conditioning was like an oasis in the heat. It must cost a fortune to keep an open space so cold, Vetiver thought, glancing out into the shimmering courtyard. Have you decided you like my lethargy gardens yet? It took a second for Vetiver to realize Tanith was speaking to her. No, not really. It's difficult to keep fish happy in this environment. Vetiver stared at her. She didn't seem very elvish. Her ears were just slightly pointed, and she was taller than anyone Vetiver had seen on this side. Her skin stretched tight over her bones, and her eyes were sunken. Vetiver couldn't imagine a less dangerous-looking person. Did we make a mistake? She wondered. Cat entered the room with a plate of sandwiches cut into triangles, and passed them around. Although she still looked tired, the cool air and shade seemed to revive her. All I could find for toppings were peanut butter and honey. Is that good with everyone? Hop reached for a second sandwich. They're great! Tanith nibbled at her piece and coughed. Can I have some water? Hop offered his bottle, but she gave it back after just one sip. It's warm and tastes like plastic. Cat, will you bring out the pitcher from the fridge? You definitely need something to drink with these, Vetiver said, trying to peel peanut butter from the roof of her mouth with her tongue. I'll get it. She hopped up and walked to the kitchen. White marble covered every surface. The dishcloth folded beside the sink was pure white, and no garbage polluted the wastebasket. For all its tidiness, or perhaps because of it, Tanith's house felt impersonal and unfriendly. Vetiver looked through 7 cabinets before she found a stack of clear plastic cups. She carried them in the cold pitcher to the living room and poured 5 glasses, careful not to spill. The captors and captive sat in silence for several minutes, drinking and enjoying the food. It felt odd to Vetiver. Her fingers seemed too big, and they felt kind of itchy. She dropped her cup and pressed her thumbnail into her fingertips. Her body suddenly felt enormous, but very small compared to everything else in the room. The bamboo slats on the floor seemed to be expanding, rising up to meet her. "I feel strange," Kat commented. "I think I got too much sun." Hop fell off the arm of the couch and stared up at the ceiling with unfocused eyes. "Was it in the food or the water?" Corbin asked. His cup dropped to the floor and waltzed a couple of inches before it fell over. Water darkened the rug. "Tanith, what did you do to us? Curse you!" Tanith reached for another sandwich, then lolled back in the couch. It seemed to Vetiver that the woman's face shimmered. "You should thank me. You guys only get dark, silent sleep. What you're about to experience is called a fever dream. You'll see and hear and feel things, but don't be alarmed. Actually, go ahead, because it's going to be terrifying. I put just a little of my blood into the water, and it infected you. You'll be like this until I die. Enjoy." Kat grasped out at the air. "You'll re-experience some of your most intense memories," Tanith went on. She toed Hop as she took the last sandwich on the plate. "It'll be easiest for this guy, since he's amnesiac. He's always been a good minion. You, though, Psycho, are going to have a tougher time." Corbin tried to throw his sandwich at Tanith, but it slipped from his fingers. He listed toward the floor. "You're afraid of so much." Tanith turned to Vetiver, who sat very still. If she moved at all, she would fall over. The whole room twisted and warped. "You're even easier. You've got your moments of mild brilliance. But really, you're just as insecure as everyone else. Like how you get sick when you're sad. Like how you spend a half hour fighting enemies out of your own head back in Hysteria Descent. Did you really think my minions would be that easy to kill? That's why you had such a hard time with the real deal." Tanith's words reached Vetiver, but she hadn't understood much after "your most intense memories." The phrase seemed to echo around in her head. But memories didn't really mean anything. You could just not think them, and they would go away. Easy. Even the worst ones. They just take longer. Vetiver screamed, her lips peeling back and her neck muscles knotting. Tanith flinched and dumped water on Vetiver. "Cut it out! You're hurting my ears!" But it wasn't enough water. "I'll burn and never go out," Vetiver knew. The TV cracked across the middle. The room warped with heat waves. Black smoke twined around Vetiver, sparks tickling her knees and arms and the inside of her nose. Tanith jumped up, she must have not been as feeble as she seemed, and shouted something, but Vetiver didn't hear. She closed her eyes and couldn't see or hear or feel anything.